Hey friends, Heath Home here. How are we doing? A very warm welcome back to the channel for another Sunday live stream. For those of you who are a fan or wanting to learn about arranging tracks, how we get from a loop to an arrangement or rough arrangement, today is going to be a good video for you to stick around and watch it till the very end. So essentially, I'm going to be picking up where I left off in last week's live stream, where I started a new idea from scratch. Just going to finish off the loop and some variations of scenes, and then I'm going to go straight into working on the arrangement of the track. Might include a bit of automation there. I also thought about maybe showing some original transitions. Perhaps try and think outside the box a bit for some ways to do transitions between parts of our track, away from some of the cliched ways that we might already know how to do that. So as always, I'll explain what I'm doing along the way. So whether you're completely new to music production and Ableton Live, or you're a seasoned pro, I'm sure there'll be some things you can take away from today's stream. The goal, as always, is to inspire you to boot up Ableton yourself and go and make some music. Feel free, of course, to ask any questions as we go, and I will do my very best to answer them. So without further ado, let's dive into today's stream. So as always, we're going to do a very quick sound check here. Hopefully already my microphone is fine and the levels are good. So if you're with me in the stream, do feel free to let me know. That would be very helpful if someone's already there joining me as we kick off today. And let's just play through sort of the peak section of the work from last week so we can kind of familiarize ourselves with that, and we can also test out the levels a little bit. So let's have a little bit of the peak loop here and then we'll crack on. Just adjusting my limiter there. We don't need it to limit too hard. All we're doing with that is just boosting the volume ever so slightly so that the musical outputs is obviously not going to be on the low side. So let's have a little look at what's going on up here in the session view. So what you're listening to there is a little bit of an evolution. So small disclaimer, I did, when I was testing that this save and everything to do with the track worked, I did sort of revisit it and had some thoughts and made a couple of small changes. So I'm going to walk you through those. I'm not somebody who likes to avoid, like, if you follow the channel and the streams, you'll know that I do pretty much everything in real time. That's sort of part of the heart and soul of heartbeat of what happens on this channel. So I don't really want to cut corners. I want to just explain what I did do, what I'd heard and wanted to sort of address while I was hearing it. So the kick is exactly as it was last week. The bass is the same as it was in last week's stream. We just have these 4 different clips. So let's have a listen to those. We've got the low 1 layered bass, so it's two layers. There's an operator and an analog. This is just the operator on its own. The operator on its own with a bit of a pattern change in the MIDI. And then we've got a layered bass, again with a simple pattern, but now both synths playing together. And then the layered bass with the change of MIDI, so the change in pitch. So that's the bass track. The 909 clap original. Let's just move our solo along. Just got this little fill pattern with some delay. And I've just kind of given myself another variation of that. So again, sort of sometimes when I do these variations as well, if I do something between streams, I'm sure you probably can gather it's not something that groundbreaking. Of course, if you feel like you need me to show you how to do that, then let me know, but it's sort of something that I'm sure many of you can do all day long, and therefore it's not as interesting to watch me similarly doing it. Similarly, so that was just a slightly different clip. It's a bit longer, has a few extra claps in it, so we've got a nice variation there. The Cabasa track is new, and it's just simply a 16th note pattern with some velocity, a little bit of a change here of a little double 32nd note and a shaker or Cabasa sound. So we've got a nice fast Cabasa. The cymbal track is exactly the same as it was before in last week's stream. It does have the option to be layered as well. So currently, in the beginning of the arrangement here, or the idea of the arrangement, it's just a hi-hat, but it can be layered with the cymbal. And again, a bit like the bass line, it could be one or the other or both together, which I kind of like that. I think that's a good idea if you put that into your thinking, to have some ideas where you could layer things or separate them. It gives you, again, more freedom to move the arrangement and the song into different directions. Okay, then we've got this wooden percussion sound. Sorry, keep shifting my solo across. And that's just a simple pattern. Again, in last week's live stream, this is the original pattern. Might work well in a breakdown, the original pattern, but it's a bit busy, and this pattern fits better around my kick drums and other drum sounds. So I've kind of just muted a couple of notes there. And then what have we got that's different? Well, again, the atmosphere was there last week. So this is the atmosphere, which has a little bit of a gate that kind of changes the pattern, and the gate is side chained to the MIDI over here. So this MIDI pattern is what's triggering the gate. And I went to quite a lot of trouble to make this sound last week. It was a choir, it was put through a frozen reverb with some effects. So if you're interested in how I made that, do go and check out last week's live stream, Getting Started. That was the lead up to this, where I made that idea from scratch. So that's pretty much the same. I also layered a voice, recorded a little voice idea. Let's just turn it up loud. It'll come around in a second to cycle round to it. It's this little section here. Okay, so I did that with my microphone, just recording a bit of that and turning that into this voice. Obviously heavily processed. Wasn't a huge fan of my voice and doing it, but it's an option that we can use today. So that's over here. And then what was kind of funny was when I did come back to the track, musically speaking, I had this melody. And when I revisited the track, the funny thing was I wasn't really feeling it anymore. And this is a music producer's dilemma. It happens to all of us. When you walk away from something and then you come back to it, I wasn't really feeling it. And then the funny thing was that when I sort of went away from the project and was doing something in my kitchen, I actually found the melody in my head and I was sort of humming along to it. So it's catchy, and maybe I will reincorporate it as a harmonic element. So the melody sounds like this. There are two versions. So there's this clip of MIDI, the original one, I believe. And then I have two, which is just a simplified variation of it, or slightly different variation. So the funny thing was, I wasn't really feeling that, as I said, when I came back into the project, but it's there, and maybe reincorporate it, especially as it was in my head in the kitchen with the project closed down. And that's generally a good sign. It means that it has some sort of hook type quality to it. And the funny thing is that the other musical parts are really nice, but they don't kind of have that element. So what else have I got? Well, during last week's stream, I created a chord progression, which looks like this. So the chords from last week. And I arpeggiated those chords, right? I had an arpeggiator, and all the synths in this track or project at the moment, they're all by me from zero. There's no preset action going on, although in a moment we are using one Ableton preset. So essentially what I think is a good idea often, and this is sort of what I would show you, is if I kind of, let's duplicate this arpeggio track over, and we'll leave one as it is. If I turn on the arpeggiator on track 8 and I play the chord progression, then we have our arpeggio, right? And it's very beautiful and it's doing what it's doing, but instantly for me, what I want to do from it is I want to print the results of that into MIDI so that I can kind of like play around with that a bit, because this is a really, I think, a good tip for you out there. Don't just, you know, plonk an arpeggio on the chords, let's say, and just leave it as is. I mean, yes, it's a chord progression and yes, it's being arpeggiated, but currently we don't get a super good feel for what that arpeggio is actually doing that is in the MIDI clip, right? So all we see is our chords and all we hear is the result of the arpeggio. So if I put a MIDI track next door, and by the way, say hi if you're here in the live stream, if you're already with me at this early stage, and do let me know. As I said, if there's any technical issues, it's good to hear from somebody to nip it in the bud so that we're not kind of without a voice or without the music. That would be all very helpful. And also just say hi, just let us know where you're tuned in from and listening to it, if you're enjoying the stream, and as I said, if you've got any questions. So I'm going to put an empty MIDI track here. I'm going to just make it the color white. I'm going to arm that track, and in the in and out section of this track, we're going to get it to be listening to the ARP. Now let's just do a quick change here. We're just going to call this one ARP2 so that we have a difference. And here we're going to say, listen to ARP2, right? Turn the track to in. And what we're going to be doing in this track is just printing the MIDI. That's what we want to do. So if I push play, and then I just drop in this chord progression at any point. And particularly when the ARP is in random, so it's random once, so it keeps kind of re-triggering the arpeggio. It's a good idea also to do what I'm about to do, because you might open the project next week and it won't sound the same as it does right now, right? It will reset and re-trigger the arpeggio. So if I click record on this new track over here, we can start capturing all that lovely MIDI. And this is the arpeggio, right? So now we can see it, we can get a feel for it, we can understand how full it is, how many octaves it's covering over here. So I'm going to go not very far here, this is just a demo, so let's cut it off there. And I'm going to hit stop. So, you know, I'd really recommend doing that, because what I did in the end over here is with the original track that we're going to be working with today, I did exactly that. And then I've got these two clips below the chord progression. So essentially for me, the chord progression I'm not using anymore. I've then basically selected, here's the recording of the arpeggio, and I've just gone through, picked out a favorite loop. So you can do exactly the same here. We could drag this over to the track now, go into the copy here, up to turn off the arpeggio here. Let's solo this, click the white clip, right? And we could go in here and we could make ourselves a loop. And we're looking for little sections that we like, little nuggets, little bits of gold. And so when I find something I like, I also basically, what I did was I made two copies of it. So the full is like my looped up section where everything's playing. As you can see, if we zoom out a bit, all those notes are included in the loop and they're all playing from the original arpeggio. But what I've done, and I think this is the real key, the reason behind this, in the clip that says motif, I've gone in and I've muted all of those ARP notes and just picked out the ones I wanted to use. So I really, really recommend that. Again, we're getting more control, more understanding. We're not just plonking an ARP on. It sounds nice. It's buzzing away in the background. We don't know what those notes are doing, and we don't then have an opportunity to get stuck in like this and look for little bits of magic. And as I said, if we go back to this clip here that I just had, and we go in here, it might be something like, depending on the track you're making, so we could zero out all those notes. Right, and that might be the sequence to your track right there. Right, so it's opening up. And then you could go on and you could, again, take another section from here, loop it up, look for something else, and there's a lot of gold inside that clip. So highly recommended when you've got an arpeggio in play. So that explains what the motive clip is. It's a little where I've looked for little kind of melodies from the arp, and then what I've given myself here is the option then to go to another clip in the arrangement in the future where the full arpeggio happens, right? Everything goes off. So we can now get rid of ARP 2. I've explained what happened here. Also the MIDI in clip, that can go as well. And then what I've got over here that is also something a little bit different to last week as part of the refining and development is I took the chord progression again across, copied it over, and then I thought about revisiting the chord progression much like I'm doing with the arpeggio here, looking for something within. I've done exactly the same with the chords. So here are the chords as they were. So if we were to go over here, hit play and play the chord progression, I'll just turn it up a bit. So it sounds nice, but it's a busy set of chords, right? So what I did was I just went into that chord progression, copied it down, and I essentially chose some chords from within the chord progression that I thought sounded nice and the position for the rhythm of them. And in the B section over here, I've actually kind of taken the chords and used one of my favorite things. So essentially, let's copy one of these down and I'll show you. So if I put this down here again, make it white. And let's say, actually, sorry, I want the original chords. So let's copy that down, make that white. So literally all I've done is been listening to this. And first of all, I've kind of Command A, sorry, I'll try that again. And here, Command A zeroed out all the notes. And then I've just unmuted a few chords that I liked. So we could do another one here. And this could sound nice going down here, but maybe not as low as that. So what I did was in the second 2 bars over here, I literally highlighted this area here and then used invert over here. Until I found something that I liked, right? So I've got something new and interesting. I've unmuted the chords I like, and then I've inverted it in the second half. And so what I ended up with in my case is these chords here. Right, and we pop the motive in. And if we go for the full arpeggio, so that's kind of where I got to, like with these little bit of adjustments, okay? The melody, as I said, funnily enough, I think I might try and reincorporate it as I explained earlier. And also with the voice, I've got a little bit of so wherever I've sort of added the voice to some of the scenes here, so we'll go through those in a moment, I've kind of got a nice little tucked away somewhere, a nice little sample or two that I could use. And I think this one could be quite interesting. So no processing on this one yet. Let's say we pop it down to somewhere where we've got a scene with the voice in it. I'll take mine out and I'll put this one in, and I'll just grab an EQ to roll off any low ends. As I said, it'll be very unprocessed at the moment, but we'll fix that later. So let's say, and also might need to do a little bit of quantizing or adjusting this sample, but it's a bit of a speech. So sometimes speeches or spoken word can be less quantized than, say, perhaps a vocal or an a cappella or something like that. So let's have this scene playing. Let's come down to scene 23.
Buddy, you know everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state.
So we could have something like this. Let's bring the volume down and then back up just to reset it a little bit.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake.
It's a little bit more professional than the voice I had. I like the message behind it. So if we want to just listen to the message for a second.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement.
Nice. So there's a nice kind of meaning behind it. The track's quite emotional with the sort of harmonies that we have at the moment. So that could be nice to incorporate. Let's do a Command F and let's have a look what Ableton offers us if we sort of filter our browser with, say, voice processing. So I'm going to look in here for what devices Ableton suggests. We could have a bit of fun with that. So let's say we go into devices, delay. Okay, so we've got smooth voice shuffler or beaten voice. So what happens if we drop one of these behind? Okay.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of...
Kind of nice, interesting, but not what I was thinking. But, you know, sometimes try these kind of things out, you know, just filter it down to the browser to voice and then see what effects Ableton Live are going to offer you that they suggest are good for the voice. I like making my own stuff, but I also like checking this. You know, there's a lot of great people that make these devices, and so therefore there could be something really cool in here that you don't think to do yourself. So let's have a look at... Interesting that there's not too many pitch type things. Let's maybe try vocal, so VOC instead. Okay, repitch. Yeah, that could be interesting. Or resonator. I think I know this one, formant -5. Let's try this because this could sound quite cool.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state.
So I'm just bringing the dry wet down until I've got a nice balance.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that...
Quite nice, right? So that might be a keeper. What else do we have here? Amp, delay, distortion, acid vocal synth, vocal crank, dynamics, EQ looping could be interesting as well. Vocal fun, mixing, mastering, airy, bright, clean. And sometimes these are kind of racks as well, as you just saw a moment ago, where someone's gone to all the trouble of popping all the snapshots together. And so you get these lovely kind of racks that you can play around with and figure out. So maybe something like one of these, vocal ambient. These should be synthesizers, so we don't kind of want that actually. Let's go back, delay, vocal spread. Okay, this might be raw, I think. Yeah, that's a raw. Clean vocal. Let's see what happens if we put this. Yeah, so you get this kind of thing, right? So perhaps we put that after the EQ. By the way, if you are here in the stream with me today, do say hello. Let me know how you're doing. If you've got any questions, feel free to add them.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant...
I think for me, I'm quite happy with the formant. I'm actually just going to add my own compressor here. So let's get the glue, Command F, GLU. Let's have the glue compressor. Clear that. just to catch the peaks.
He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see.
Let's bring the threshold down a bit.
He says that only a few
You can
people
see
are awake,
when the
and they
peaks are
live in a
hitting.
state of constant, total amazement.
Right, so if you look at the vocal here, the reason for having a bit of compression on this, hope it makes sense, is we've got sort of sections like this where obviously the vocal is not very evenly recorded, typically of a voice, right? And this would be almost like the quietest in that little section there. And then we've got all the way up here, very heavy dynamics. So we could expect to see the compressor. Let's see if we can actually, what was I trying to do? See both at the same time. We could do that in the other view actually. So let's say we do this, right? So we should, with this view,
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know,
see the compressor reacting to these, right?
He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. My
So
father
let
says
it
that
pass by
almost the whole
again.
world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see.
So yeah, it's kind of listening out, catching those a bit. That's good. I'm just going to A-B the compressor
My
now.
father says that almost the whole world is asleep.
Could have a little bit of
Everybody
makeup
you know,
back.
everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people
There we
are
go.
awake,
All
and
right,
they
so I
live
think that might be a good replacement for my attempt at, another time I will add my voice and keep it. But as I said, that was actually just a bit of a fun experiment last week. And whether we go ahead with keeping it or not is another thing. But now what I would do is just pop up here, and in my scenes, I'm going to add this vocal where I had my vocal, so I can kind of see that over here for now. Pop it into those clip slots. And again, whatever we're doing here, nothing's in concrete. It's just the session view arrangement or the jam or the structure that I created beginning last week. And again, if you look back at last week's live stream, you can go and watch me put these scenes together, as they're called in Ableton Live. These are scenes in the session view. Scenes are what we have down here. They're numbered, and in some cases, obviously, I've taken the time to just write intro, peak, main, break. So let's have a walk through those scenes now so you can hear what I've done with all the stuff up the top here, which is the kind of original loop and some variations. It's just missing the melody, but as I said, we might try and incorporate that in a little bit, but without the melody, it still should be quite a nice track. I'm just going to call this track the new, well, let's call it Awake. That might be the name of the track. Awake vocal. It's time to awaken, or awaken. Maybe actually that whole it's time to awaken, but let's just call this awaken voice. There we go. Just so we know what it is. All right, so let's walk our way through the scenes. What we've got, well, let's have a little playthrough, and then we're going to get stuck into arranging it. Missed my spot there. I'm just changing the scenes by feeling when I feel like changing them. Hi, just wanted to pronounce this properly in the chat there. Birdaboo, I'm not sure. Sorry if I get that wrong. Maybe you can help me with that. Why using this view and not the other way of seeing your clips? Well, that's a long story, but as a teacher and trainer of Ableton Live, if you're an Ableton Live user, let's say the very basic answer to that question, and you only work in the arrangement view, I think you're limiting yourself an awful lot to the power of the tools and workflows that we have available in Ableton Live. And if we just pay attention to the names of the different views, this is the session view and this is the arrangement view, right? So it's kind of giving you, in the end, a clue to what it's really built for. It's a linear timeline, as we also can call it. Looking down the bottom here, we see all of these numbers down at the very bottom, they are time. So if you start your projects in here, there are occasions when I begin a project in here and I don't have any work whatsoever over here. But it's generally if I'm working with a very long sample or tracked instruments, perhaps, where we track in a guitar performance, or I'm working with a long vocal recording or something like that. Otherwise, I think if you get used to working in this view for coming up with your ideas, think of this as a sketch pad, think of this as a very fast way to use your creativity and come up with ideas. And straight away in this view, we're not bound by time. We're not thinking about, oh, it needs to be 3 minutes long or anything like that. We're just really having fun and making music. In this view, when we push stop and play, we're always starting from the left here, like we would be when we're working our way through a song. At this point in time, this isn't a song yet. It's a group of sounds playing together as a loop. And then what you'll see in a moment is how I've evolved that loop into these different scenes, as we call them here. And now we do have a rough structure going on in the background here. Also, what this will teach you is live performance. And Ableton Live, the key is in the name. It is a software that has its roots in live performance. And just think, if you're working on a song over here and you want to perform it live, you might find yourself going back the other direction to add your elements back over here into scenes, so you can perform live in a club with MIDI controllers and improvisation and things. Whereas if you start here, it's all already here. So I hope that kind of helps. It would be a very long video to go through all the details, but as somebody who, as I said, trains this software professionally, and that's how I learned, and also the institutions that I work for also teach Ableton Live, such as Berkeley or Point Blank Music School. The leaders in the field, there's a reason behind it. As I said, and I think if you're not doing it, try it. See if you can get outside of your comfort zone, because when you talk about not seeing your clips, I'm guessing you're talking about waveforms and things like that. Of course, we can click in here and see the waveform. But I do understand, like, a lot of people like to see the audio and the waveform, and it is easier in the arrangement view to see that, but it's different, right? One trick for you, so if I show you here, looking at more than one thing at the same time, if we open up, let's say, let's get something that's side by side here. Like, let's say up here, if I open up this clip here, this is my arpeggio there in the notes there. I just bring it down slightly and I hold shift on my keyboard and I click the MIDI clip next door. You'll see I've now layered the two over. Let's just give the other one a brighter color. So you can see here that you can actually do shift and select, sorry, there was one mistake there. Let me just do that one more time. I'll just change the color when they're not both selected. So let's now have the green. Okay, so we'll open up the chords, layer the motive, and we've now got this blue clip here, which is the notes of the motive. So you can kind of see them down in here. And the green clip, the green MIDI notes are the chords. So you can see how they're interacting with each other. And if you change colors of those to more brighter or very good contrast, you can kind of see the relationships between your different parts. And you can do this to up to about 12 clips, where you can actually all shift and select them like this and see how they're all interacting with each other. Again, we could do it with something else, such as, you know, maybe the drums over here or the kick and the bass. So if we open up this is the bass line here, and then we go and just hold down shift on a keyboard, tap the kick track, we could look up here and zoom down, and we can see there's our kick in the red, and there in the other sort of paler red, or color you want to call it, you can see the relationship here between the bass and the kick, which can be really useful. You can see I've got a syncopated bass. It's my bass notes here, so I can kind of get the feel for that. So session view, yeah, I agree. For looking at audio waveforms, it's a bit tricky. You have to click into them to bring up the clip view, but in a moment, it'll all make sense. We're going to go over to the other view and work in there. So I think what I'll do, I started to play through the layout of the track in the scenes here, but I think what I'll do is I'll just do it now, but actually do the process that I want to do next, which is move it from this view over into the arrangement view so we can start working in the other view. That's the goal of today. So thanks for your question. Hope that helps. As I can see, you put that's awesome. Thank you very much. Well, you're very welcome. So let's say what we're going to do is pop in the arrangement view for a moment. Have a little look in here. Just make sure there's nothing we're going to overwrite in here. It's all empty. Great. We're going to make sure there's no loop on. If we had a loop turned on in here, like somewhere like here, that could be a bit annoying because the recording will go along and then stop in the loop and just keep looping around. We don't really want that. So if you've got loop turned on in the arrangement view, switch it off, right? And then we're going to click the big stop button all the way back to 1.1 over here on the left, pop back over to the session view, and we're going to, in a second, hit record up here, the big records button at the top, and I'm going to start working my way down through these scenes, and I'm going to change them when I feel like changing them. Nothing's set in concrete. It's just going to try and do it by feeling, get in the zone, change it when I feel like changing it, and then we should have in a moment a rough song structure, and we're going to move ourselves from this view today over to the other view and start working. So let's do that. Let's hit record and let's go. So I made a mistake back there, which I will fix.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He says that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement.
Boom. All right. So there we go. If we look over here now and we check into the arrangement view, we're going to pop over here and we're going to click this little orange box up the very top just by bar 169. That's going to bring everything into focus, and there we could see what we've just recorded in here. And now we've kind of officially migrated ourselves from the session view into the arrangement view, right? And now it all kind of hopefully makes a lot of sense. We're now looking at our very first rough arrangement of the song idea, and there was a few mistakes in there actually, because one thing when I added this vocal, I didn't pay attention to is that it's 8 bars long. And I wasn't actually paying attention to that, but I can see that now as I started to record. I understood then how long it was. And in this area here, I kind of chopped it off. I had one section where I gave it the full 8 bars and one where I didn't. So what I might do there is a bit of an edit in a little bit. So what we might kind of do is remove this section here, right, which is kind of, and basically draw through all the way down. So it's kind of like half a take of, so it should be only 4 bars, and we can see up the top here it is. And then what we can do in Ableton is we can use up the top here, edit. So this is tools that often people aren't aware of and don't use all the time. We go up to where it says live file, we go edit, and we come down here and we can say cut time. What does this do for us? It's not magic, but it's going to cut away that section and join all of the clips together exactly where they need to be without us needing to drag things around and fiddle around, right? Which a lot of people do, and you don't need to do that. So I'm going to say cut time there, and that just eliminates that. But same tools, I'm actually going to grab all of the section that I did like where the full vocal then is incorporated. So this is correct. I kind of wanted 2 of these. And then I'm going to go back up and I'm going to say duplicate time. And so now I've kind of fixed that. I've actually duplicated that whole section twice and corrected that error, right? So I think that's really, those tools are very useful. So we've now got this, what I would call a skeleton arrangement. That is that we've got a track now here in the arrangement view. We're going to be working in this view pretty much from now onwards. I'm just going to click Alt and just bring up the bottom of one track so we can see everything here. And what I would personally do now is start to maybe pop in a couple of markers. That could be a good idea as well. So let's click on the first marker here, which is the beginning of 1.1.1, and let's pop over to just above the kick and hit set, and we're going to set a marker there. So we've got this now, this marker here, and if you like, you can also name these if you don't want to have the numbers, and you can say intro, and you can write yourself a few notes. You know, you've got a little bit of space to work in here, so you could say intro, you know, whatever. Check this, add the clap, do something. You can use it like a little bit of a notepad if you like. I'm going to keep it intro because another trick I do sometimes if I need to do that is I add a new MIDI clip, right? I bring it up the top here, switch it off. It's not going to have any instruments in it, but think of it like a notepad. So you can kind of make a MIDI clip here for the first, you know, 4 bars, and then you can write in the name of that MIDI clip again some information like, you know, first 8 bars or whatever you want to write, but you're writing yourself notes, you know, change this, automate that. It's a really, I think, quite a nice way to make yourself your own little notepad track, right? And the handy thing is if you put these clips in the same as the markers, then you can just click on that clip like I've just done, Command L on a Mac or Control L on Windows and loop it, and now you've looped your first 8 bars. So you can use these clips for every 8 bars or however you want to do it, and then you can easily loop up sections of your song, right? So double-edged sword, as we say in English, and a rather good one, I think. So I'm going to carry on setting some markers, and these are going to be actually every 8 bars, right? So for the moment, that's my kind of point where I'd like to be checking in my head that each 8 bars work the way I want them to work. Now, maybe you do 4 bars, maybe you do 16, you put a marker. That's up to you. Can't really say there's a rule book. I like to make sure in my tracks that every 8 bars are interesting enough to get a tick, to get a yes. If not, I'm going to go in and work on them and make them more interesting. If you're a 16 bar person that can listen to the same 16 bars over and over, well, good luck to you. You know, then you would be putting a marker every 16 bars and saying, okay, every 16 bars, do I give that the thumbs up, the tick, the green light to move on? So hopefully I'm making sense. I'll walk you through what I'm talking about more specifically in a moment, but think about all of these sections need to be interesting. A producer that I really admire from Holland, in my sort of musical taste as much as his mental side, how he helps others. He definitely shares plenty of information about what he's doing, is a guy called Patrice Baumel, and he talks about every bar needing a reason to exist in his tracks, and that's just that section, right? And I've just highlighted there. So think about that level of detail. Every 8 bars, we don't have to be a mathematician to understand that in every 8 bars, we've got 2 lots of 4. And those 2 lots of 4 should probably be a little bit different to each other, same as in 16 bars, there's 2 lots of 8, and they should be a little bit different to each other in some way, right? So now I've got all of my 8 bars marked up there. And the fun thing is, if you have these markers as well, then you can click those markers and push play, and playback will start from those markers. So they're again also a double-edged sword, that they give you a nice tool to work with, right? So we've got these kind of markers, we've got possibility of writing ourselves notes, and we've got this rough arrangement. So what I would personally do now, we could also mark up basically where the peak is. So the peak of the track was in scene, let's just pop over here for a second. It was down in this scene here in 21. I had the peak. So, you know, somewhere in here, that would be about here. So if we loop that up, we could also put a little special marker here and just write ourselves a note just saying that that is the peak of the track. What do I mean by the peak? I mean the full energy, the max energy of the track. So if we kind of loop this up, this should be where the track reached its crescendo or reached its kind of max impact. You know, so after this, at this next marker that I'm adding here, this new one here, this is the main break. because the way I've actually laid this track out is we've got kind of a couple of mini breaks. I kind of quite like it. It's original. It's got kind of an early break, and then we've got another break here. So we'll have to evaluate those as we go and make sure they work. Again, breaks. Here's some tips for you, ladies and gents out there. Breaks, do we need them in our tracks? The answer is no, we don't. The breaks, if you put breakdowns in your track or break the track down, you're doing it for tension and release. You're doing it to tell your story. You're doing it to tell the story of your song and the parts that you have. Make your listeners, make your dancers, make your people feel something about the music. And often people throw in breaks for no particular reason other than they think they need them. And so, don't do that. Think about, does the track need it? And if it does, yes. If not, no. And don't have any breaks. You don't have to. Right, so what I'm going to do now is between these markers in my 8 bars, and I see that I actually did 4 bars. So I got a bit carried away, actually. My mistake. I should have zoomed out a little bit, so someone might have picked up on that, but we can delete these markers the same as we add them. So I might just delete them. It's going to be my numbering is a little bit off, but that's okay. I can live with that. I can fix that later. It's not important. So I got a bit carried away there, and I did have a marker every 4 bars. So now it's back to 8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to evaluate this first 8 bars with what I've kind of recorded over and make some notes, make some thoughts, make adjustments as we go. And hopefully, let's see how far we get through the track, working from the very start to the very end and making edits and adjustments. Like I said, once we get over into here, we could loop it up and listen. I kind of know what it sounds like in my head. So, for now, we're now just going to refine it, develop it, edit it, and work our way along. And I also notice my track length finishes around 5 minutes 20. So I feel like I rushed the peak a little bit. So I'm most likely probably going to, again, look at somewhere like here. I might already do it and say edit, duplicate time, and sort of make the peak extend a little bit further, double the length. And that sort of starts to get me a little closer to the target of, I think, a 6-minute track or somewhere around there. So I might need to adjust that a bit more in the future. So if we push play back at the very beginning of the track, we've just got this little simple percussion idea. Now, interestingly, the kick doesn't come straight in on bar 5. It possibly could, right? But I kind of brought it in slightly later. So is that a problem or is it not a problem? And again, we can kind of see that because I did all my scenes and changes of scenes manually, we've got kind of like the next section, then the next 4 bars sort of not in line with the 4 bars, right? But we could fix that. We could, again, cut some time here. So we could cut this time away here. And hopefully sort of doing it like I've done and making mistakes or making things that need changing helps you learn these tools. I think it's kind of useful, right? So let's do that. So now we've kind of cut that away. So I think straight away with the kick, if the kick does come in there, I would like to perhaps filter it. It's a fairly cliched move, but let's maybe try a filtered kick here at the start. And then we're going to bring that away from being filtered later on. So we're going to add some automation already to this. We're going to automate the on-off of the filter. So that's going to be the first thing we're going to do. Where we decide to switch it off, let's see. Do we turn it off already at bar 9 and only filter it for a little bit? Maybe. So I'm going to have the device on off automated, and I really recommend that because if you don't do that as part of your automation with filters, you're leaving it switched on and it will cut the kick and make it sound different without you perhaps wanting that. Now I'm just saying only do that where I want you to do it, and otherwise don't. You're off. Also, I'm going to make it a high pass, so it's going to cut the low end, and I'm just going to bring that low end down till I like the amount of the kick that we can feel and hear. Something like that, I think is quite cool. So let's say we go for 240 Hertz. Now another option would be to, as sometimes we make a decision like this as well, which is to gradually filter it back down to the full kick. I'm going to go for something a bit different to that. I'm going to just drop the new kick straight in and make that happen. And by the way, because I cut, so as you can see, the markers need a little bit of refinement, because as I cut some time away, sometimes your markers will not be in the right place, right? Which, as I said, I can live with. Even perhaps I should have done them one at a time as I went along, as I'm making quite some big changes and they're no longer in the right position. But I'm sure you kind of get the handle of that, hopefully, and understood that that was just a decision I made. And in the end, the way I'm working, it's, you know, probably meant that I have to readjust them. All right, so what else have we got? We've got this nice kind of clap fill coming in, bit of percussion going on, filtered kick now. So already in these 8 bars, it might be nice to try something else out in maybe, say, the percussion, or maybe the claps I think we could leave alone, but let's maybe try something new here, a little variation that we don't have. So we'll color the clip differently. Let's maybe give it something we haven't already used in the project. And then I'm going to pop into here, and it's a drum rack, so I could use some of the other sounds. So this is a sound that's playing. It's quite a nice sound. So what I might do is just move one hit or a couple of hits somewhere else in the rack as an option. And I think that would make more sense on the last hits here. So let's undo that. And we also may not want it. Sorry, let me just fix that. That was. Forgotten which one it was now. I think it was that one. All right. So what I'm thinking actually is this clip here, maybe just at the very end. So like that. Okay, that could be nice. Maybe we'll take out this last kick here. So this is all the sort of stuff you do in the arrangement view. You know, once you get in here, this is why we're now working in this view. We can see we're giving ourselves some editing and changing as we go along, and just refining things, making things a little bit more interesting, thinking about things we didn't do in the session view, but we've got our sketch over. And sometimes when you come up with this little change here, that's why it's nice to color it a different color, put it there. I might now use that all the way through the track, possibly, or on transitions or something like that. So it's really, you know, worth doing those kind of things. I'm gonna take that notepad track away just so it doesn't confuse things for the moment, but I think that is a good idea. I've already shown you how you could use it, right? So now we're going to look at this transition. This is our very first transition, happens right here. Now for me, already, that's a bit too much, a bit too early for this bass line. I can leave that much, much later, or at least later than now. So I'm going to attempt to take that away from this area. Okay, and so what I did just there is use 0 on my keyboard, if you're not familiar with that. Great in this view. So just the number 0, you can mute and unmute things. This is exactly the same as what I did over here. And we also have like one new element already coming in after this transition, and it's this Atmos that I built the other day, right? So we've got I think I might make this a bit more of a feature, the little percussion. Now, sometimes I like to have the clap in audio as well, as we can play around with that. The same clap that I'm using in MIDI on my 909 clap track. So I'm just going to use Hot Swap to find it in the browser, the audio, the original one-shots. There it is down there. And I'm just going to make below the clap track an audio track. Just have to do it again because I clicked away. And just make sure you hot swap down in where the sample is, right? So, by the way, if you are here in the live stream today, hope you're enjoying it. We are pushing on with arranging the new music idea I started last week. If you're here with me, feel free to say hello. Let me know where you're tuned in and listening from. I hope you're enjoying it. Hope you're learning things. Hope you're finding it interesting and a good way to spend your Sunday afternoon if you're like me in Europe, or perhaps it's morning where you are if you're in the States. All right, so we've got the clap here in audio. We can do a few funky things with that. We can reverse it. So we could have a reverse clap in here. It's a bit of another cliched kind of sound, but it can work well. It is lining up with the clap above it, so maybe it's a bit too much. So what we might do is take out this fill here and have the reverse. We can try that. So we could just mute it for a moment. Bring the volume down. Let's bring it right down in volume. Right, so we can do that. There's all sorts of fun stuff we could do. We could also grab the left edge here and stretch it. So if we put warping on, so we can loop it, which wasn't on by default, we can then sort of grab the left edge here, hold shift on our keyboard, and we could stretch it out and make it into a kind of quite a cool little FX kind of stretched reverse. Right? So that could be interesting later. We might sort of copy that. I want to go back, but we might use that again later. But I also sort of thought about having on this 909 clap that we now have an audio. Let's put an EQ on it. Let's process it a little bit. Just have it sit where we want it. So a classic with this kind of thing as well would be to maybe drown it in a reverb or have like a delay. So when it comes through here again, it's a little bit more like a custom effect, right? So we could make it really washed out. And the fun thing is if you start to do that, so with the amount of decay I have now, if we just solo this, you'll see it doesn't die away to silence for a long time. That's because I increased the decay here an awful long way, right? So if we put that back, we can also choose some really big kind of spaces in here. That's quite nice, just the default big space. And what you could do, you could duplicate the track down. And then with this version down the bottom here, we could freeze and flatten it. And there we have now our own little reverse with the tail on it. And you could use that in many ways, right? So it could already be also a riser or a down shifter, however you want to call it. So we've got now a new part that we've just built below. So we could call this, so you might take off the front here and remove the clap, and you might just use this section. So let's say we take out the reverse clap. So let's just do a bit of housekeeping here. We're going to call this the reverse clap, rev clap. All right, you want to play hardball on my keyboard by the look of it. Okay. So we've got our rev clap, and this one we can just call, down shift. And the good thing is that when you make little FX parts like this, they're family. They came from in the track. You could creatively use another sample here, right? It doesn't have to be the 909 clap that I'm working with in my claps in the track. But in this case, I did do that. And it does mean that it is family, right? It's the same pitch. It's the same clap sound. So that's up to you, but you can use another sample. But in this case, tuning wise and sound wise, it should kind of glue into the track is what I'm trying to say, in a way that works well, right? And so we've now got our own little downshifter. And you could also, as you probably have already thought ahead of me, you could also grab this, pop it over, reverse it back, and turn it into an up riser, right? So, sky's the limit, really. Whoops, didn't mean to split it. So we could do that. And there's a lot more, to be honest. This wasn't meant to be too heavy on the sound design today, but obviously I can turn that up, which I would do. And we could add some more movement to it to make it a bit more interesting. So right, and you could connect that up nicely to this one. And there you have it. It's a bit early to have a lot of that, but think about that these are audio clips. They have their own pitching, so you can repitch these sounds. You can play around with the warping algorithm. So if we go to the first one, the up riser, and we put it in, leave it in beats, and we move the beat transient preservation, let's say we choose 16ths, we can now get this kind of glitchy effect. And so as far as reprocessing these goes and giving them new ideas, so repitched, changing the beat, preserving the transients with that nice gated kind of effect, that's pretty cool. We could put all that back, and let's say we just don't have any of the beat preservation. We could also go and get ourselves, let's say, Ableton's AutoPan could be nice, and pop that on here and have a bit of AutoPan shifting it around. And let's say we make it, it could be quick. So we lost a bit of the power from that. So we put a utility after this as the AutoPan does lower the volume a bit. So that's mainly because the pitches are different. I was just checking that I did leave that at +3, so this one probably would sound a little bit better if it was at the same pitch. Oh, it's kind of interesting as it is. All right, so hopefully you get the idea there, just a little bit of inspiration. I'm going to switch all that off. We can come back to that, but I just wanted to show you that, obviously making these kind of little transition things as you go along can be a lot of fun, and you can sort of get in the zone of what you need to do, what you want to do, and start building little ideas. So we've already got this little percussion change. We've got a reverse option if we like. I think I would keep it quite simple at this point in time. So actually a lot of these downshifters and uplifter, I'm not going to use at this point in time, but maybe later, yes. So I think maybe just the reverse clap. Just something simple. And maybe a little bit of reverb, not as much as what I used to make the effect itself, right? Yeah, so if you're ever wondering like the decay and the size, you can kind of check and see when it decays away to silence. So it's more or less about this loop length disappearing, and we can adjust that by, you know, bringing down the dry wet, but also bringing the decay size down. And we could also go back to just a more simple reverb like that one, which would mean that it's not got as long a decay and it's not a big space, right? It's much tighter. So I think I'll go with that for now. Cool, let's crack on. I like the kick dropping here. The atmos as well could kind of come in with a filter on it, so we might also filter that. Gate first, yes. So same as the kick drum, automation lane, filter on off first. Maybe we bring it gradually all the way across the whole clip. Let's try that and see what it sounds like. And then we're going to, this case, slowly open up the frequency to like where it's open to now. So we're going to be using a low pass, and we're going to start with it almost at silence. Okay, happy with that. Let's see if I adjust it back here in a moment as we move along. Let's just bring our tracks down a bit, close the browser, give ourselves a bit more real estate. So again, I don't want my bass to sort of come in there. I'm going to pull that back. What have we got? We've got this theme that I started, might sort of carry that across there. And then in this cymbal track, it would make the obvious change in this area of this second section. But what we might actually do, we could try one of these here perhaps. But also, I'm just going to try this out and then see what it sounds like. So yeah, I think that could gradually come in as well, but it doesn't have to come in fully. And I know that I've left the 2 layers on. So I might have mentioned this earlier, that this is actually an instrument rack and there's a hi-hat and a cymbal. Well, at this early point in time, I don't want the cymbal to be part of the game. So off is good in automation, and I think on is much later, like maybe here somewhere. So I'm just going to put that as a rough guide, more towards the peak. I'm going to layer that up with a buddy, and it's going to give more drive and more energy. So again, on the cymbal track, what do you reckon I'm going to add directly after it? You know, I don't have to actually. You can filter it inside the simpler as well, but it might be nice to have an overall filter, and it could also be tucked in here, and then it's only affecting the hi-hat. Here, it could affect the cymbal and the hi-hat. So I hope that makes sense. By the way, do say hi if you're here in the stream with me. This is a Sunday in Ibiza. My name's Heath. I'm just going to have a sip of water. I hope you're having a great weekend. And if you're here in the stream with me, well, I hope you're learning about some of the secrets and the source behind kind of working the arrangement view and getting cracking with an arrangement in Ableton Live. All right, so we're going to get our filter on off again under control. I've explained why. As I said, I've come across many people's music in the past where they didn't automate that and the filter's just constantly over the track, and it is changing the sound. It's filtering it in some way, shape or form, and I think you want to know exactly what it's doing and you take control of that. Just appearing a little bit more open. Nice. Really subtle. Okay, yeah, I understood what was happening there. It's a little bit just out on in terms of where it's currently looped. So let's maybe tackle that. We want kind of from that area. So let's actually just redo this. Take that away, bring that over, and copy of it over. Yeah, so that's good, that end. Let's put them over there and mute them up. Just want it a little bit longer if I'm going to use it at all. There's nothing in any of that section to here. All right, so we've got a bit of, tension going on. That's what we're looking for here. We've got a bit of sort of vibe happening as we're going along here. So let's say we now carry past into the next transition. I still feel like it's too early for the bass. So let me just control the hi-hat opening up a little bit. Actually, I'll just take that point out. I think it's fine. And on the Atmos, where are we in the scheme of things? Okay. So maybe where this reverse is, let's bring the kick track down. Might just take out a couple of kicks there for a little bit of vibe as well. See what that sounds like. A couple of beats. Got the tension in there, and now let's hear what this happens in this 8 bars here. Right, so what I think we can do here is I kind of like what's happened in this area. And the cymbal's sort of taken me away from this theme happening, but we might bring that theme back in at the end, but we might give it a little break here because it's kind of like the cymbals automation has drawn my ear to that. Also this, the automation opening of the atmosphere. And I think what I would do is carry the atmosphere over into here. So I'm going to bring my filter across. And I'm going to filter it back down again here. So it's going to go back out on its way to coming out of the track. By the way, don't be shy. If you're here in the stream with me, do feel free to drop a comment or drop a question in the chat and I'll do my best to answer it. Yeah, so what does that sound like then as we go from there into this? Could be interesting to bring the bass in that little bit before the end of break, this mini break, and we also could copy this filtered kick and reuse it in this area here. So we bring the kick over, but we want sort of everything. We want the actual automation and everything on that one. Let's see if we can do that. Just missing the kick now. Okay, let's bring this down earlier. Time it with the start of the bass almost. So now I just start to feel like, can I reuse some of these ideas? Can I give us a break from things? So I think the wood block as well is crying out for a little bit of tension and release on it. Just play around with the auto pan for a second as well. That's nice. Okay, so we might automate that so that it modulates differently in here. It's been modulating in the background all the time, the panning that is. So it's moving left to right in our ears there. And in this case, that's kind of nice with the groove. It's a fast movement backwards and forwards. So let's try changing the movement in here. I think it could be fun to sort of speed it up and then slow it down. That is the movement of the panning. Just a little bit wonky. And it's in note sync, so all we're doing is changing the amount. Actually, that isn't doing quite what I was thinking it was doing, actually, which what I was thinking to do was more the rate, but that sounds quite nice. Let's just maybe pop that down. And sorry, I didn't realize that I was not on the rate. So let's try that, which is currently at 1.5. So if we come right, this would be speeding, that's slowing it down, and this is speeding it up. So if we are going this direction, let's say we go to quarter notes from where we are, and then we slow it back down. See what that sounds like. Maybe we leave also the amount, see what that sounds like. Otherwise, we could remove the amount. I think it's quite interesting, so quite happy to leave both the automations that we've got selected there. I'm just going to reset it back to after the break, but it's going to return to itself. All right, now let's work on that. Maybe another little reverse, short reverse burst. The downshifters, upshifters I think are working good. We could have another downshifter here. Too early for that, so we're going to take that away. Let's have a look at our automation as well. We're back with the filter off on the hi-hat. I'm fine with that. The clap patterns changed slightly. So this is the thing where those variations happened earlier is really good. So we've got that different clap happening now, the original as it's known. And that is giving, again, a little bit of a subtle change in the background. We didn't bring in anything new here. So this is kind of what's going on in my mind as I'm doing this. I'm thinking about, well, the new thing that happened was coming in was the motive during the break, and now it's continuing after the break. And the atmosphere track is out, so we're getting a break from that. I'm really happy about that. Didn't just continue that on here. And if the atmosphere was staying in, I'd probably try and lose the percussion here as an alternative, right, to that. And I think this theme of the little occasional ones of those, maybe we bring back a few more. Let's try that. And again, we're just varying it up every now and then. We want to kind of keep those little surprises happening. And let's have a look at the ARP. What are we automating on this? Perhaps the filter. Absolutely. So I'd probably like to do that on my MIDI controller, I think. So I will record that. Right across the whole track, I'm going to record that modulating the filter frequency cutoff of the meld. What else could we also do? Probably the shape. Yes, also the FM amount, probably the release envelope and the attack envelope. Yeah, lots of nice things that we can get that sounding much more evolving. So that's something I'm going to come back to and visit, but I know that I want to do that, right? That's going to be a strong part of keeping all this area interesting and evolving and changing, right? So that might be the time for when you saw me before with my notepad track, my empty MIDI track, and I'll just put in a MIDI clip in that empty MIDI track, and it's just purely there for, like, you know, writing myself some notes. So I'm going to say automate well, it's the meld, so let's call it ARP, cut off rel for release. It's my sort of slang, but I don't have all the space in the world here. I think I can go quite far, actually. Probably can keep going. Cut off release and maybe the attack. Yeah, so you can keep writing as long as the MIDI clip is the length of the MIDI clip. So that's pretty helpful. That's now a notepad. And generally what I do with that is have a color that I use that tells me there's things I need to do in the track. And I normally do put that right at the very top for the moment. So automate, ARP, cut off, release, attack. I'm going to revisit that because that's going to be mapped to a MIDI controller, and I'm going to make that move around. But I know that this section's going to be much more attached to that. Let's go try this without the bass as well coming in there. But I think it works. Just the comparison. So where it migrates here, that is into the full ARP. Again, it could be that we just use the full ARP and not that new Cabasa sound. We use the full ARP to be the change in that section. Take out a kick or two just before that. Transition. And what we might do in this space here, so this is the transition from phrase to the next phrase, instead of the reverse clap, I started to go with something that we're already doing. Why don't we try and make something original in the ARP here? So let's say this last bit of the arpeggio here, the motive. And let's say in that clip, so it's just this section of notes here. Let's try pitch down. Yeah, not enough impact. Go the other way. And maybe even just the last two notes. Right, so just that little tiny fill here, just to give us again some little change. But I need to just check that now against what happens afterwards. Maybe not, as I had it. Yeah, not really. It doesn't connect up so well there. So I should have checked that. So let me redraw that across, resplit it, and now I'll try and do the same thing again, but I want to kind of make those two link up a little bit better. So probably going down into here, as this is lower down here, and we could put this all together, right, as well if we wished. So we could split it and consolidate it, and then we would kind of see what we've got going on here. So if we bring this note here down, all right, just a little bit of a change. And we'll have the reverse clap. Can't get enough of that. All right. Might reuse this. Maybe not, as it's the motive into the full. Okay, let's move the cymbal. Bit of automation. So it's sort of this kind of like little detail work, right? The parts were there, the idea, the scenes kind of laid it out. As you can see, I've kind of followed that along. I've made some changes here and there, but I'm kind of following the scene structure that I had created in the session view, just editing it, modifying it a little bit, taking things out, creating a few little new things as we go. Those little details, like these little reverses and the FX downrisers and uplifters, in my opinion, they don't really make a lot of sense in this workflow. You don't need to get bogged down thinking about those things. They're much easier to make and understand where they need to go when you're over here working now on the song, right? So don't panic when you're over here. You know, obviously when you change from one scene to another, it's fairly abrupt and chunky and kind of doesn't flow and segue smoothly, but it's just to lay it out, right? It's just a layout. You're sort of saying, take away these parts, add these parts. And that's really what song structure is. You know, we're building tension and release, building up to that peak over here. This peak area right up over here is where we're heading to, and we're kind of bringing in our parts, taking them away, and just getting that kind of feeling together of what we're looking for as we're going along. Automation is going to be a strong part of this track. I already know that, as I said, and that's why I was testing out before the arpeggio. That's going to be a job for, you know, mapping up to a MIDI controller and really sort of riding that cutoff, and maybe getting an LFO map to the release or attack just for a bit of movement. Getting those nice things happening like that, just adding the spice. It's why we're also doing things like moving this auto pan, around that was on the percussion, and automating that, and doing little things like that, so we can get lots and lots of movement. So we could also, you know, again, even as the track's building along here, we could have that working its way to the break here, and maybe getting faster in its panning. That would add tension to that percussion. That's just sort of kind of thinking about all those things as you go along here, and try stuff out. Doesn't hurt, right? If it's not a keeper, it's not a keeper, but we don't know if we don't try. This is something you're not going to notice like as the main star of the show, what I'm doing here, but it's making a difference in the background there. And when you listen closely in the future, you might really hear the difference between that percussion swinging around your head and not moving around your head like it is. Okay, so let's try going into this next break and seeing how things feel. Sorry, I just clicked a few times on the marker there. All right, let's let it go this time.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that
All right, so bass line, if it's going to carry into the break here, which it currently is, we might have 2 plays through of the pattern, but again, I'm looking for some filter action. So at the moment, we're only with the operator layer. So if we pop into the operator, we could add a filter externally over here, and auto filter again the whole instrument rack, but we could also try the operator's filter itself as the automation in here. So let's click into points, see what that sounds like. So I've just turned the filter on, that's all I've done here, and now grab the cutoff. Let's sweep it down till it's sort of deep fading out. We could cut it the other way.
my father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that
Maybe get this wood block out for a little bit.
my father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that
And I'm going to copy my automation of the auto pan in the first break into this section here.
my father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to.
Let's take that out. All right, let's try again.
My father says that He said that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of... My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that only... My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant... Says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. My father says that almost the whole world is asleep.
So yeah,
Everybody
maybe this break should just be one of the vocal and then come back in. So we actually don't repeat the vocal twice. So that would be this loop.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement.
Or we do sort of some affected vocal work in the second section here.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement.
Yeah, I kind of like that area.
They live in a state of constant,
Just this bit.
total amazement.
Try something out here.
Only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement.
Yeah, this is kind of the idea I think I have here.
Constant, total amazement.
So let's change the timing.
Amazement. Amazement. Constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement.
So yeah, just trying to shift the rhythm, the timing, a little bit of this.
Constant, total amazement.
While it's going to play through that, let's have a delay.
Constant, total amazement.
And you have some sort of automation on a delay here. Let's unsync the sides. Let's have automation lane on off of the delay. We might make it very specific to words only or over the whole vocal phrase, yet to be decided, but I'm kind of in the thoughts as we go here. It's all happening in real time. Dry wet as well would be nice. Maybe the feedback we also automate. Give it its own separate little lane. It's at 50. So
my father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement. Constant, total My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement.
Okay, so just playing around with
My father
space
says
here.
that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you
I
see,
need to get
everybody you
my
talk
down
to.
shifter
He
or
said
up
that only a
shifter,
few
up
people
riser.
are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement.
Don't forget that the up here also probably here is
Total amazement.
filtering down with automation is kind of what I would be doing there when I get around to recording that in. Now let's have a listen to our drop. Oops, just before we do that, let's just get rid of a marker or two that's incorrect. Also like that the break isn't actually, so I'm not sure if you noticed that, but it's not exactly 16 bars, which would be there. It's 18 bars, so it's in multiples of 2, but it's kind of got a little bit of interest to that. Whether that's a keeper or not, we'll find out a little bit later. But for now, it can be a keeper. So the layer's already happening on the other side of the break. That is the cymbal and the hi-hat together on this track that's called Cymbal. Let's see, what's the energy like before? So it would be a very obvious pickup on this side. So maybe we'll go for that. And that means the cabasa stays longer out. And it's going to come in nearer to the peak. The atmosphere's back, and now we've got a break from the woodblock, right, as well. So first break since the intro of this track. Great kind of planning again, because that's going to give us a rest from that particular sound. And we could also carry through here our filtered kick idea. Could also extend in here.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody.
So just the automation of it.
He said that only a few.
Excuse me.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement.
We have a little rebuild here, but we've got to rebuild it with plenty of automation. So filter would be indeed on. And again, hopefully it makes sense. You've seen that these filters have come really in handy, because once again, a little bit like that woodblock theme that I started, once you've kind of got this in swing and you're automating it, then you can get in there and continue to use that across sections of the track, right? So it's something that's going to stick around. So yeah, building up a little bit and then coming back out perhaps is the idea, just to give it a little bit more vibe in this area, but not too much. Don't want to get too carried away just yet. We've got plenty to go in the track, long way to go. And we're going to split it here, and we're going to pull that back a few hi-hats.
Total amazement. Total amazement. Constant, total amazement.
Could also have a little bit of delay on the hi-hats in here. So we might just use the built-in return delay. And turn on my pencil tool. Just delay these last couple of hi-hats into this space. Okay, so the Atmos track, similarly to the cymbal filter, back in again, and let's control how it evolves into this section. Maybe we can start up and bring it down, or we could start again with it just coming in. With the goal to open it up towards the peak, just coming up over here somewhere. So we might be eventually getting back up to there. So the thing for me is, I did mention it before, that I felt like earlier on in today's stream that the peak is a little bit rushed, like we get to it a little bit quickly, as it's already kind of cropping up very, very soon here, just after this break. And I think that is too soon. So I feel like there definitely needs to be some adjustment there. So I would say probably all of this section that I'm working on at the moment, right, all the way down, that could be popping up again to edit, duplicate time. Let's give ourselves another whole full 8 bars of that. And in this 8 bars, of course, there's going to be plenty of variation on that kind of thing. We might have in this second section absolutely some element that was about to appear over here, which is the layered bass is one change, or the cabasa. So maybe we try in this area here the layered bass as the next change on the way to the peak, right? That's what I'm kind of thinking. So some form of a change there. And really the peak should probably, again, sorry about the markers that I did earlier, as they ended up being, yeah, needing to be adjusted quite a lot. And the numbering, as I said, is out, but not to worry. Hopefully most of you kind of got the feel for what happened there and why. And yeah, that's as I chopped and moved things around as we've gone along. All right, so nice. Now that was good that just happened, because right, this also, here's another theme. Nice. There you go. It's just kind of getting into that state where you're, I virtually don't want to stop now once I get kind of working like this. Things are popping up in my head, even though I'm here on YouTube, and it's not that easy sometimes as well when you've got, you chat it, you're talking and you're doing different things, but you want to kind of get in that state, right, where ideas are coming into your head all the time about, hey, let's do this, let's do that. So suddenly that little idea that I used there, I think makes really cool sense to pop up now in the track. I just changed the rhythm, so we could even do the whole repeat of this section. Don't want to make it like too samey, but yeah, I think I'll leave this one away. Nice. So just a quick look at what's going to happen next, and then it will be a wrap for today. So I would carry my loop across to this marker. I feel I actually will just delete the 22, make the main break come over to there. And so now we're sort of nudging into the peak. If we zoom out a little bit, we're sort of extending the track slightly, which would be my goal in the end. I want to work towards a 6-minute sort of track-ish. Doesn't have to be bang on 6 minutes, but I personally, if I'm going to play it in my own DJ sets, I don't like when it's 4 minutes or sub 5. But I think by the time we get the main break sorted, the outro, the bridge, all that kind of thing, we'll have no problem extending the track a bit. Again, we don't have to rush things to happen. And right now, we're just kind of getting some action happening here. And it's feeling like a peak, right? I hope you can feel that. It's really starting to kind of push towards a peak. And yeah, what's going to happen in here is definitely going to change a bit. So I'll just move some of these clips over. So the full maybe goes all the way to there. The new loop that comes in may not start that early. There might be a bit of motive first. So just sort of guessing a little bit into the main break. We might take the atmosphere all the way up to there, and then it might do a repeat of this filtering away, most likely yes. So we can kind of remove it. Again, it might be a gradual removal, or it might be more quickly taken away, depends on the feeling of that. And we will step out, as I said, in a bit and have a listen to what we've got, but we'll also be thinking, as I said, where we are trying to go into this main break. But that little theme there, really happy about that little vocal thing that came out of the first break that I was working on. That's going to, I think, fit nicely into some of these areas. Also, does the woodblock need to come in? If it does reappear right at the peak, maybe for these last kind of 4 bars here, perhaps it's in there just to give the last final bit of energy. The kabas is in by then, and maybe we have that little theme there as well. The full is going across. So let's have a little listen up to that point. So let's go from 14, the midpoint of that break.
Only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement.
Need a little bit more of the up. Maybe just 1/2 a bar out. Another MIDI clip with a note for here. Let's copy this one over. Automate Cabasa in, so I'm going to filter that in. Color it white as well, just to remind me something needs to happen. Okay, so I think this layered bass is an automated bass, so let's drag that over and see now. Oh, that's worse. So what's happening there? Let's have a little listen. Yeah, so somewhere in here, there were some layered basses clips where inside the clip is some automation turning off one of the layers of the bass. So that must be what's happening. Let's have a look. So we've got analog mixer. Let's copy that down. So that is definitely on. So it would be the operator mixer. Yeah, and there it is there, the automation. So we want to remove that, put it back to on. This one we could take away, that we can bring down. So now we should fix that. Yeah, I like the woodblock coming in.
Only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement.
Nice. So let me just get the automation for that done, and then I'm going to call it a wrap for today. So let's just copy over our automation of the delay. Just make sure that's working okay. That should be fine. So what I would do is, like I'm doing, I'm starting to zero things out in this area, muting things, taking them out, starting to listen what's going to carry through this area, what's not, as this would be the main break. But already the sort of main or sort of rough elements are there. And again, you know, perhaps when we're doing this again next week, I'll fix up all the markers so they're kind of in the right place and all labeled up correctly. As I said, that's a bit of a mess, but there's a reason behind that. So if I kind of pause at that point and we go and sort of do a quick run through from the start of where we're up to. So we're just past the peak and into the main break. The peak again might even be needing to be a bit longer. I would start to try and feel this out. But let's loop ourselves up to kind of where we are, and let's say we're really just up to here, but I'm already starting to envision and hear what's going to happen in this next section, right? So let's do a playthrough from here. As always, it's been a pleasure to be with you on this Sunday afternoon. I hope if you've been watching or joining the live stream, being part of this, that you've enjoyed it, that you've learned some things about Ableton Live and arranging your music, taking it from session view into the arrangement view. And yeah, I really do hope you've enjoyed it. Of course, if you have, do consider giving the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you know when I'm going to drop my next video or videos pretty much every Sunday on a live stream. And of course, I will put a video at the end of this stream when I can. You don't have to wait a little window until the live stream's fully uploaded. That will be what I would suggest watching next. And there are already videos on this channel about loop to arrangement, so perhaps one of those. Strongly suggest watching that as a follow on to this one so you can get really good at your arranging skills, getting your loop over to an arrangement. So let's hit play, have a listen to where we got up to, and then we'll know. As I said, for me, it's pretty logic. What I want to do in the next Sunday's live stream is finish this off, add the automation, fix these notes, the things that I wrote as I went along, and just get it all tied together nicely into a finished kind of track. I think it's sounding pretty okay at the moment, so let's have a playthrough and go from there.
My father says that almost the whole world is asleep. Everybody you know, everybody you see, everybody you talk to. He said that only a few people are awake, and they live in a state of constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement. Constant, total amazement. Constant, total
Yeah. So where are we now? Back at the start. Yep. So we've looped back around. Perfect. So I was just adjusting some levels as we were going through the playthrough there, just tweaking things a little bit. Also, just to give you a preview to that ARP modulation, the automation of the filter cutoff. There's lots to come from that. That's going to really give the track a huge lift. It's a big, big part of the drive of the melodic idea. So I hope you could join me next Sunday for the live stream where I'm going to step back into this, pick up exactly where we are right at this end of the peak, into the main break, and get this track all the way to the outro, automation done, a nice little balance, and yeah, let's see where we end up there. So thank you as always for joining me in this Sunday's live stream. I wish you a fantastic rest of your weekend. Take care. Happy music making. Open up Ableton Live. Get stuck in. Ciao for now. This is Heath Holmes signing out. Bye bye. See you later. See you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.